thought that one of them would betray Jesus filled his disciples' hearts with fear and amazement. They recognized that he had enemies, but how could it be one of those within that closely knit inner circle would betray him? The disciples knew Jesus' words were always and absolutely true, but who would betray him and why? So they began to search their hearts and to inquire, Lord, is it I? Let's carefully consider this question and see what it reveals about ourselves. First, it reminds us of how little we actually understand ourselves. Not one of those 12 men gathered around that table in the upper room really grasped his own true nature. Consider Peter, for example. He thought he knew himself. When Jesus said, "All ye shall be offended because of me this night," Peter answered, "Though all men shall be offended because of thee, yet will I never be offended." And Jesus responded to that, "Verily I say unto thee, that this night before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice." Then Peter declared, "Though I should die with thee, yet I will never deny thee." But he did deny the Lord 3 times. The same fact applies to each one of us. None of us really senses our true nature. We deceive ourselves and we think that we know what makes us tick, or that we are spiritual and strong. When the prophet Elisha told Hazael that in the future he would burn Israel's strongholds, slay young men with the sword, dash children to pieces, and slaughter expectant mothers, Hazael replied, "Is thy servant a dog that he should do this great thing?" Yet he did what the prophet foretold. Lord, is it I? We must ask, what is in my own heart? Not what is in the heart of Andrew or Thomas or Matthew. Communion is a special time when we examine our own hearts, when we humbly and sincerely ask the Lord to take away anything that would hinder his blessing. Lord, is it I? Second, this question confronts us with how little we know our Lord. In fact, that's our greatest problem. Our overwhelming need is to know him better. In John 17:3, it says, "This is life eternal, they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent." When Mark Twain was in Europe, he met a number of prominent people. Arriving in Berlin, he received an invitation to visit the Kaiser. "Why, Papa," exclaimed his little daughter in awe, "if it keeps on this way, there won't be anybody left for you to get acquainted with but God." How many who call themselves Christians have yet really met God? Job's unhelpful friend Eliphaz, the Temanite, told the patriarch, "Acquaint now thyself with him and be at peace." Although Eliphaz was wrong about Job's true spiritual condition, his advice does apply to the rest of us. The reason we sometimes get upset and worry and fret is that we have forgotten to renew our acquaintance with the Lord. The conversation during the whole Passover evening in the upper room and the questions they asked reveal how little the disciples really knew Jesus. They still thought he was going to be a temporal king, a national political deliverer. When he washed their feet, they didn't understand why he did it. They didn't really grasp his divinity and his eternity. One of them said, "Lord, show us the Father, and it sufficeth us." Jesus responded, "Have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me? Lord, is it I? How well do we know him?" Third, this question opens to us how well the Lord knows you and me. Despite that fact, how much he still loves us. Lord, is it I? Lord, you know who it is, for you know all about us. John 6:64 says, Jesus knew from the beginning who should betray him. Jesus saw the inner workings of every heart around that table, and he knows every heart today. The Lord searcheth all hearts and understandeth all the imaginations of the thoughts. 1 Chronicles 28, verse 9. The Lord, seeing past our spiritual camouflage, declares, "There is none righteous, no, not one." Romans 3:10. The gospel prophet reminds us that all our righteousnesses are as filthy rags in Isaiah 64:6. And again we read, All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way. Isaiah 53, verse 6. But in spite of all of this, he loves us. He loved us enough to die in our place. And that night in the upper room, Jesus instituted the Lord's Supper to keep this wonderful fact vividly before us. Air Florida's Flight 90 took off from Washington National Airport on Wednesday, January 13, 1982. It crashed at the 14th Street Bridge, falling into the freezing Potomac River. As soon as possible, a helicopter came to rescue survivors from the icy waters. The crew threw the hoist ring to a man in his 50s with a black mustache. He could have gone out on the first trip. However, he passed the ring to someone else, to a man who was bleeding badly from a head injury. 5 times the helicopter went back to the river. Each time the man with the mustache handed the ring to someone else, including 3 women who were hanging on to the broken tail section of the plane. When the crew returned the 6th time to rescue the man, he had gone under. He had put others ahead of himself, and he had died that they might live. I'm thankful that Jesus put others ahead of himself, and that he was willing to die that we might live. Lord, is it I? Yes, thank God that he died so that you and I can live and live eternally. As we celebrate communion, we express our gratitude from the depths of our hearts. This time we'll separate for the foot washing service. We have rooms for couples, and areas for men and for women. And if you choose not to participate, you're welcome to remain here in the sanctuary, and we'll be back up in just a little bit.